All right, guys. We are live. Welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews, and I'm really excited. This guy's prose is so beautiful, and the guy who I actually read a lot about, who I'm talking to, is in the chat, Philip Chase. But Vaughn Roycroft. Vaughn Roycroft, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So where do you hail from tonight?
I am in a little teeny town called Harbert, Michigan, which is on the Lake Michigan shore. We're about an hour and 20 minutes out of the city of Chicago, and we can get there by train as well to avoid traffic. But we're on the Michigan side of the lake at the southern end of Lake Michigan.
Guys, Lake Michigan is huge.
It is.
So I thought I heard it in your accent when I first started talking to you, but I'm usually wrong about those sort of things. My mother and father were born in Grayling, Michigan,
Oh,
up
okay.
north, the Ausable River.
Ah,
So I grew up between here and Ohio. Go Blue, by the way. We beat them 3 years in a row now. So I was excited about that. But that's so cool, man. I can just imagine your view.
yeah. We look mainly at forests here, but we're about a 10-minute walk from the shore, and we go almost every day. We have a black lab who loves to go to the beach, so we go no matter the weather. It was raining today, but we were still down there.
That's amazing, man. I
Yeah.
love that you're enjoying it. That's so cool to hear. So real quick, we've got some people in the chat. Thank you for asking, Alex. This another indie author, Alex Valdiers. He says, "Is your daughter doing better?" She is. Thank you for asking. Just one of them things that's got to run their courses. Thank God. Eo Montague, of course, my moderator. He is here, my buddy, my writing buddy. I haven't done so much writing lately, and he's really been pushing me. So I appreciate that. You need that, right?
You do.
Bert Strubble, another good guy. He's in here always. Thank you for popping in. And then, of course, Philip Chase.
Hey,
how are
Philip.
you? I hope you're having a wonderful night, Philip. It's always good to hear from you. Tim McKay, howdy. John A. Douglas, he's always here as well. I got the notification. He's always here. I really appreciate him. He just dropped his debut novel called The Black Crown. I'm so happy for him.
We just started following each other on Twitter, so
he's a good guy.
Yeah, good.
And yes, Philip, practically we are. I mean, we're really not that far. I'm close to Columbus, Ohio, so it's probably like 4 or 5 hours ish.
I would guess, yeah, around there.
Not too bad. Ryan Skeffington, another indie author. Howdy. Thank you for popping in. And yes, I'm beginning to understand that that's a wonderful thing, Philip. And Christopher Navo, another wonderful booktuber and author, soon-to-be author. Yeah. So thank you for popping in. And sorry, John, don't tell people I'm a good guy. I have a bad reputation to maintain. Well, I tell people the truth, but you can do what you want, brother. So, oh my gosh. I've been so excited to talk to you ever since I got your book. What stood out to me was the title, The Severing Sun and Bold Ascension, your cover. But first, so the trilogy name, so beautiful. The trilogy's name is Sundered Nation Trilogy. Would you go into what has been published so far and like the subgenre and the blurb? Okay.
The Sundered Nation trilogy is basically the skinny blurb is Goths versus Romans as the empire declines from the viewpoint of the Goths. So it's barbarians at the gate, but I start them back in their homeland and get them to the gate eventually. But it's a long road there. So it's from the viewpoint of Germanic tribesmen, and then it's an alt history as much as it is a standard epic fantasy. But the sweep of it is it takes place in the Black Sea region of Europe, and as each book progresses, the world gets bigger, and you see more and more of the empire. My alternate version of the Roman Empire.
I love that.
The Sundered Nation title comes from the fact that the Goths actually split into two groups. the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths, and basically Eastern Goths and Western Goths, but Visigoths were much more in tune with the civilized world and much more part of it, and entangled with the Romans and the Roman government than the Ostrogoths were.
So epic fantasy and alternate history would be your subgenre?
Yeah.
That's wonderful, man. I don't hear a lot of, like, I mean, there's plenty out there, I know that, but I haven't talked to on my channel a lot of alternate history, and I think that's such a cool thing.
Cool.
I think, yeah, of course. So what is the appropriate age you would say that, they could begin reading your novels?
I would say obviously parental discretion, but 18 plus is what we have it listed as, and that's mainly it's I'm pretty free with the cursing. There's a little bit of graphic sex and quite a bit of graphic violence, and I never shied away from being somewhat explicit with sexual scenes. So if that's going to upset some parents or even any readers at all, I prefer that they just stay away. But I always say it's plot. It's entwined with the plot. I never do it gratuitously. I don't. At least I try not to. I try to think of the sexual content as usually being a turning point in at least one of the characters' lives, if not more. So, it's just one of those things. I've had a few readers reach out to me and say they didn't enjoy that aspect of the work. But, I had one lady still gave me 4 stars, and she said, I only have to take away 1 star because I just didn't like the sex. So
that's a wonderful thing about being something like rating novels or reviewing novels or short stories, whatever. It's so subjective, and I don't know I'm sure, I don't know. There's so many different things and aspects in our life, but really reading somebody's story through somebody's personal prose or perspective, can be so subjective. And I think you're right when you make those points. You really covered what is important to me if I'm reading that kind of thing. Like, is there a point to it? Or is it just for shock value?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there really is any value if you're just trying to be like, oh, this, for no reason. It just kind of throws me off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I really respect that.
I hope it's not a stumbler for most people, but it's funny. I was thinking about this because it's come up a few times, and I think I'm a little older than a lot of my readers and a lot of my fellow authors out there, and I grew up in the kind of came of age reading in the 1970s, and explicit sex in fiction was very common in my early days. It was something, and when I was young, because we were kind of titillated by it, we sought that out, when I was a teenager and so forth. I remember The Thornbirds was the book in the mid 70s that everybody was like, oh, it's got all this sex in it. And so, yeah. So we were, all kind of, highlighting passages and passing the book around and so forth. But I think I kind of got used to the fact that when it was done well, it really showcased. I mean, it's a chance to really showcase how characters react to one another, and it can really convey a turning point in a character's life. And like, I think in The Severing Son, there are 3 explicit scenes, and each one of them, in my mind, is a huge turning point for my characters. So that's why I include them, and I'm not going to back off from that, I guess. So
I love that.
If people don't like it, I hope they just really stay away. I mean,
yeah.
Like,
if you're offended, then keep away from what you're offended by. But other people's, like myself, it's something that I have found when I have read it to be a very emotional turning point, like you said, and it benefited the story, and that's what you wanted to write, and you're an author and you're an individual, and I love that you're going to write what you want to. And yeah, I've heard so many. I've heard so much wonderful things. Matt on books, his talk about your this. I was at the Severing Son. Yeah, it was the Severing Son. He had said that there's some sexual stuff, but he loved the book, and I think he loved it for the same reason that I will. Like, there's a point to it. It's not just like, I've read some books that are just explicitly violent or sexual for no reason, and I kind of quit them.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for violence. I'm glad you brought that up, because I like all of my violence to be, like you said, just for shock value. It doesn't make any sense to me. But if it to show, I mean, we're trying to put you as the reader in someone else's shoes. And so we want you to experience their life, and some of the aspects of that include, like in this case, how would we react to being in a battle, or, being faced with kill or be killed, so.
Absolutely. And I love what Philip says. He says those scenes are actually very important for the character development. Look, guys, if there's somebody that I'm like, okay, I trust what he's talking about, Philip's way high on that list. Just me personally, and I know so many other people. So thank you for weighing in on that. I knew he would be here. He usually doesn't stay up late for these, but there's those certain people, and I knew you'd be one.
He and I are in the same boat on going to bed early.
And I was going to actually joke with you about that, because when I interviewed him, I was like 9. He's like, bro, I'm usually in bed. I'm like, okay, no problem. We'll try 8. My kids actually were good for him and good for you. So 8 o'clock might be my new thing. I don't know. My kids are getting a little bit older and maybe a little bit more mature. Now, I say that very hopefully.
Yeah.
But,
well, that's how you're going to get us old fogies. So
I love you. You're not an old fogey, but I know what you're saying, and I love every single person in this community so much. So the more accessible I can make my times, the better. Let's see. I love that. Book Mama 87 says, write what you enjoy. Don't filter your creativity. Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. Let's see. Philip J says, old dudes go to bed early. Quoting.
We might read in bed for a while, but we're there pretty early. So
if I didn't have as many little children, I would probably be there too. Now I'm 33, so I have young children, a little bit older than most people, but I do what I can. Christopher Navo says, good for you, Vaughn, sticking to your guns. If the scene is important to the character, glad you included it. I totally agree. I knew he would be here too. Matt says wonderful things.
Oh, here's Matt.
Excuse me. I'm the guy who skips the spice scenes, all of them, but I know I'm a prude. Well, I mean,
hey, he's still, and that's the thing. You can do that as well. And I'm sure once you sense something like that's about to happen, you can just flip a few pages and say, oh, here we go.
I actually find that very respectful of him. To not just be like, you know what? I loved every single part of this novel except that little tiny part. To have the maturity to say, okay, let me skip to the, I know what's going on. I've got the point, and maybe skip the details that may make him uncomfortable. That's really respectable, man. Good for you.
I appreciate it, Matt, very much.
Alex says, I'm just spent most on the evening on this topic. A reviewer reached out to tell me she had a problem with a sex/violent scene, but she kept reading and saw how it was needed, but it's an awful scene. I think the point's really been hit home. A lot of people respect it if there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So what was your inspiration behind this trilogy? What was the spark where you're like, I know what I want to write about?
So it goes way back for me. And it goes back to my 6th grade teacher, actually. And I think I've told this story a few times before, but it's really important to me. My teacher gave me a box set of The Lord of the Rings. And he set a few of us up reading, and I had read The Hobbit, which he gave me in a couple of days because I loved it so much. So I think he was just trying to keep me busy. So he went and bought me out of his own pocket a box set of The Lord of the Rings, and I just loved it. And he was nice enough to take set up meetings where we could just discuss these books, because I was kind of reading off on my own. And one of the things he just kind of threw out there to me was that I told him I really loved the Riders of Rohan, and he had just speculated that the Riders of Rohan might be based on a tributary state like the Romans had with the Goths. And I didn't even know what he was really talking about at the time, but I was kind of interested because I remember in one of our classrooms, we had this map of the Roman Empire, and then it was the infusion of the barbarian groups into the Roman Empire and how they started gobbling up the Western Empire. And one of the big clouds that moved into northern Italy was, and it was just one of those Europe maps with colors, but it said Goths. And I didn't know really anything about that, and I just started getting really interested in this. So they're barbarians, but Mr. Raymond said maybe they were like the Riders of Rohan. This is how my 11-year-old brain was working.
I love that you said his name.
Yeah.
Very big memory for you.
Oh, well, I reached out to him when I reached out to him when I got an agent for this story for The Severing Son. And my wife said, have you ever thanked Mr. Raymond? Because all this is kind of because of him. So I did. I found him. I tracked him down, and I wrote him a letter. And he was retired, and just he seemed really moved by it. And we've corresponded several times since then. But that's
amazing.
5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. So yeah, he remembered giving me the books. He didn't remember telling me that about the Riders of Rohan, but he was like, well, I guess.
So how many years after this is this?
Yeah, that was in 1971. So yeah, it was
40 years, something like that.
More than that, yeah.
50 years. That's awesome though. But gosh, what I'm thinking is the experience that you both probably had. That was an important time. That was a foundational moment for you.
Yeah.
And him not really knowing that, and then finding that out, and adding to his worthiness, as we all use, we get as a teacher, especially.
I think he was super happy to have learned that, because I'm sure it happened, dozens or hundreds of times that he affected kids' lives, even with little teeny tweaks in little ways. But to hear that later, I know it moved him and touched him. He read the letter I sent him to his adult children. It happened to be at Christmas time. It was about this time of the year. And he said, it wasn't a dry in the house.
That's amazing, man.
Pretty nice, yeah.
And especially to hear that's got to be so heartwarming, because as you kind of get older, you really treasure those moments where you can really touch somebody's heart, and whether you're giving that or getting that, they're both so important and amazing.
Exactly.
What a wonderful story, Vaughn. Thank you. I love your name, by the way, Vaughn Roycroft. Cool. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a name for being what a name, period, but especially to put out a book.
I'm glad it works for you.
Oh, yeah. One of the most wonderful names I've ever heard in my life.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. So I read this on your website. I've read it a couple times because I really enjoy it. Would you tell us about the time when your father came to you and handed you a Time magazine?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my dad was a pretty big reader, but he didn't read a lot of fiction. My parents were both huge readers. My mom read a lot of fiction, but my dad, he read a lot of periodicals, and he read nonfiction. And so quite often we would have kind of a reading time. And our house, our television was in the basement. And, if you were going to sit in the living room, you had to be quiet and read. And I like to read, so I was reading something on our living room floor on the carpet, and this was when I was about 12, and I had read The Lord of the Rings all the way through a couple times, and my dad was reading his pile of magazines, and he had a Time magazine, and he came over to me, and he had it flipped open to a page, and he handed it to me, and it was it was the page that was telling me that Tolkien had passed away. And his obituary page in Time magazine with his picture. And I mean, it just stunned me. I just didn't even have any words, because this was my favorite book and the author that had gotten me reading. And I just had been seeking other books that were like it. And then my dad saw that I was a little choked up by it, and he just said, "Sorry, champ," and just kind of went back to reading and left me with the magazine. And as someone that age, I was 12, as you would, and the audacity of youth, I thought to myself, well, somebody's got to do something about this. There needs to be more stories in the Middle Earth world, and then I just thought, well, you got to remember, I didn't know really anybody except Mr. Raymond who had even read these books. My parents certainly didn't read that sort of thing. And I thought, well, I guess I'll have to do it. I'll have to carry the torch forward, I just thought, well, okay, I'm going to have to be the guy that writes these stories now,
And that first, I want to say that when I read that, I was very touched by that story, because I mean, oh gosh, there's so many different themes we could dissect from that moment where he hands you this note, or this magazine. But what I loved even more is, as I read on, this torch that you talk about. I love how you put it. So my next question, naturally, and you kind of almost went into it, was, what does being a writer mean to you, or an author mean to you?
So I guess taking the torch, I have to say, by the time I got to college, the torch had kind of flickered out a little bit. But, it's one of those things. It's like a buried ember. It just kind of keeps glowing away as the years go by. And, life is kind of passing by. And I went through in my 30s, my wife and I ran a wholesale lumber company in Chicago. And we kind of got to, well, let me tell you, something happened. It was 9/11 in 2001 happened. And we were so stunned. The whole country was so stunned by 9/11. And I remember so clearly, we shut the lumberyard down after the towers fell. And we closed for the rest of the week, actually. And what my wife and I decided to do was come here, this was our new getaway cottage. It was new to us then. And we got here, and we were like just kind of looking to soothe ourselves and comfort ourselves. And one of the things that we did was we just started reading. And I hadn't read a lot of fiction in the years leading up to that. I'd just been too busy. But as I sat there reading one day, I thought, I should be doing more of this. And we kind of both felt that way. And we were like, we looked back, and I was 40 years old then. I had just turned 40. And I looked back, and my 30s were just a blur. I mean, all we did was work from dawn to dusk. And I kind of had the idea of formulating then, in those days afterward. And then another very important thing happened that December. This was, from 9/11 to December. We came here as often as we could. We were starting to read again. We were trying to work less. We were trying to, just trying to look at our lives in a way that, what's really valuable to us. And what happened that December was the release of The Fellowship of the Ring. And I went on opening day, and I sat in the theater and was blown away. I was so scared that they were going to ruin it again.
Naturally.
And I was like, wow, The Lord of the Rings, it was just that beginning story for me. And it kind of relit that torch. And I thought, I got home from that movie, and I went and I found my old copies of Lord of the Rings, and I reread it right away, the whole trilogy. And I'm like, God, we had to wait a year between each movie in those days,
Yeah.
And it was a spark that got me back to the to maybe I should write, and about it was 2 years later that we sold our business and moved here full time, and I started a little carpentry business, thinking I would just write as a sideline to that. And it wasn't only about 5 or 6 years before I had kind of the teeter-totter of carpentry writing. It just kind of tilted, and I was all of a sudden I found myself just writing the majority of the time that I had available. That became my job.
That's an incredible story. I knew I had to ask about that after reading it. I believe you call it The Journey on your website.
Yeah.
I absolutely implore all of you to go to vaughnroycroft.com and read that. It touched me very deeply because I did not know that Lord of the Rings was a book. I was born in 1990, so I wasn't into books. And when I watched Lord of the Rings, even when I watch it today, and yes, guys, I watched The Hobbits and The Lord of the Rings multiple times during the week still today. It just brings me so much inspiration each and every time I watch it. I've saved The Hobbit for when my sons are old enough to kind of grasp their imagination a little more and understand what I'm reading.
Yeah, right.
But I hope it's half as inspiring to them as I hear it is to you and Tolkien's writing.
Yeah.
And Philip says, I will never forget watching Fellowship of the Ring and saying aloud in the theater when I first saw the Shire, they got it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I went with my brother-in-law. My wife's brother was a big Lord of the Rings fan, and we went together to the first showing of it on opening day. It was like the 11 a.m. show. And we're sitting in the theater together, and it wasn't very crowded. I mean, because it was so early in the day, I think. But we're just watching, and we watched the whole, the prologue basically with Galadriel, narrating that all the backstory, and then we got to the Shire, and they did that panning shot of the Shire, and I whispered over to my brother-in-law. I said, "What do you think? And is it any good?" And he said, or I said, "What do you think? Do you like it?" And he said, "No." And then he goes, "I love it." So we were just both like, and I was like, at first I was like, what? I just like, yeah, I was right with Philip. They nailed it. And I knew right away, just from those opening scenes. And it was so exciting,
I'll bet.
And then to have to wait, for each one to come out. I mean, it was just, they were big events around here for our whole family. By the time we got to the third film, we had, carloads of nieces and nephews. They always came out at Christmas time, and we would all go together and, then watch the DVDs between over and over again, of course.
Yes.
But yeah, it became
amazing.
It became a family affair. Definitely.
So I have a really funny story. I believe Return of the King. I was definitely a senior in high school, and my sister was dating somebody, and my mom's like, "Look, you guys aren't, you can go to the movies with Matthew, me, and you guys can watch what he wants to watch, so you guys can be in the same theater sitting next to him." I said, "All right, we're going to watch Return of the King." She falls asleep. Oh. And he, this was one of my buddies. He posted, he's like, I was like, "Sorry, man, it's a 3-hour movie. What'd you expect?" Unless you're really into it at this point, you kind of really don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So that's jumping into the fire pretty late there. Yeah.
So, and neither my sister nor him had ever seen any previous movie, and me, I'm enjoying the hell out of it, And so, but she falls asleep. I'll always remember that. That was really funny.
Yeah. Being able to sleep during that movie to me is a little shocking, but I guess I get it. It's long, and if you have no background, having not seen the first two.
She was a 16-year-old teenage girl, so she had no interest in Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
But it's a really fun memory for me, and she laughs at it now that she loves the movies.
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a good memory. Hail the Lore says, question: who is your favorite Lord of the Rings character? His is Aragorn.
I have to go with Samwise Gamgee. he's really the hero. I mean, and really, by the time you get to the end, when you read those final pages, you kind of see that for Tolkien, it was Sam was us. Sam, was like inspirational, but us. I mean, be a good friend, hang in there, never lose hope, and even Frodo, who's an everyman, he was kind of a station above that. I mean, I think Sam is just phenomenal, a phenomenal character from a writing standpoint, and I love the portrayal in the films.
He makes me cry every time I watch it.
He's fantastic. He's the best. Everybody needs a Sam, don't they? I mean,
oh my God, yeah. Where are the Sams in this world? Come on, I hope I'm a Sam.
Yeah. That's what I say. I think Tolkien wanted us to aspire to be a Sam. It's just my feeling on it, and I love Aragorn too. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I love all of them, but
who's more relatable than Sam, though?
Yeah, right.
He what he does to me is he just, regardless of what's to come, he finds this love for his friend.
Yeah,
and he's given this task. Don't let anything happen to him. Yeah. And how seriously and how and much he values that. I don't remember the exact words, but like something like, I thought I lost you, Mr. Frodo. And he's respectful, Mr. Frodo, every single time. It's like I tell my wife, I was like, look, not many movies can get to me, but anytime I hear or see Samwise Gamgee on film crying, you can see my 6'5", 250-pound self tear up.
Me too. Yeah,
I love it. John says, Lord help me, as I just realized Beard is younger than me. I'm so sorry to hear that. You're old, John. I have to poke with him.
Join us, old fogies, and go to bed early.
And even better, Philip says, how about realizing the Beard is closer to my daughter's age?
Ooh.
I'm not. That's funny. I love that. Usually my comment says, sometimes I'll click on them and I have no context and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say. But it's so, I love the context that goes in and the friendships, and it's just lovely to me. The people that come to watch what I do here, and it makes me so happy. Let me make sure I haven't missed anything, because I'm really good at that, missing things. Let's see. I don't think I've missed any questions, guys. If I skip over your question and you have one that I missed, please Yes, exactly. Yep, that's out of context. So we'll move on. Who are a few authors, and as many as you really want to say, that have a hand in the way that you write?
I think Tolkien is probably right up there, but that's kind of more on an inspirational level. Ken Follett, Pillars of the Earth was another one. Inspired me. MMK, who wrote The Far Pavilions. That was a favorite book of mine that I read several times as a teenager. But then I guess as far as how I execute a story, I got to move into people like Stephen Pressfield. Was one guy I started reading right during that time, right after 9/11. I read Gates of Fire, which was about the Spartans at Thermopylae, and kind of the grit of that, and the kind of this historical aspect and the scope. That really inspired me and kind of like shaped how I wanted to tell a story. And then I have to go with George R. R. Martin, and he kind of like showed me what was possible for scope and scale for world building and number of POV characters that were possible. Just being able to see this conflict he was building from so many aspects, I was hugely fascinated by that, and I still love his work. Juliette Merlier, who she actually did a blurb for me for The Severing Son. She's part of my writing group, but she's become kind of a mentor of mine. But she's been writing since, I think, her first books came out in the 80s, and they're based on Irish lore and myth. She just builds her history and the kind of mythic feel and the legendary kind of aspects of it really showed me what was possible in a story from, incorporating history, but then making it into fantasy. She wrote a series of books that I loved called the Seven Waters books.
The Seven Waters books?
Yeah. Seven Waters being one word. It's set in a kind of an alternate Ireland, and she just takes old Irish tales and just makes them into these stories with characters that you can identify with. It's almost like being transported back, and that was an aspect of what she brought to me. And she was kind enough to read some of my early work and comment on it, and so she's been huge in how I write. And then I guess also most recently, I love Joe Abercrombie's work, and
yes, he's so good.
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody to just aspire to because he's so good. And just being able to say, not every hero, and I like the idea of playing around with the idea of heroes and villains, and not necessarily making things so black and white. There's shades of gray that can be really interesting in storytelling
and hilarious.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
He makes me laugh when my brain's like, you should not be laughing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that, and I always go back to this one moment. And to anybody, I doubt anybody will be offended, but at the end of the Blade itself, Baez comes out. So there's a bunch of ruckus coming towards Baez. He's taking a shower and he comes out, and Joe Abercrombie, he says something along the lines as Baez comes out with he's naked, wet, with his slapping fruits out in the open. And I woke up the whole house. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he really captures something special as far as a reader. I think he has a lot to obviously offer as what to aspire to do with certain aspects of writing.
I don't think I'll ever be nearly as funny as he is, obviously, but just I know that adding just a little element of humor here and there really takes a character a long way into the reader's heart. Even people that are doing terrible things, if you can make someone laugh, it goes a long way to kind of smoothing things over for the reader. So.
Absolutely. E.L. Montague knows me well. I've brought that line up quite a few times. So I'm a fan of that line. I'm sorry. It's the moment
really good one.
In the Blade itself where I died. There's two moments I remember that. Well, I remember most of it, but what I mean is two that stood out to me. One was that, and then the other was when Glocta is confronted by West, and West is, hey, how you doing? And Glocks is like, look, we were in the war together, and I got really messed up, and you never came to check on me. And Glocta is really just this miserable, inhumane kind of guy that tortures people, and he's just not like me. That's what I'm thinking this whole time. And he finds out that Glocta's mother actually turned West away, and all of a sudden, Glocta's this human that has real emotions.
Yeah,
and I remember feeling so, I don't know.
Yeah,
it was just amazing.
It's a hard thing to do, and he pulls it off to take a torturer and make us like feel that kind of empathy for that character, is really skillfully done.
Absolutely. Chris says, I'm always laughing when Glocta is in a scene, especially with Steve Pacey's audio. Dude, Steve Pacey is, oh man. If I had like unlimited money to have somebody as my narrator, it'd probably have to be Steve Pacey. He does such a wonderful job.
He just made Ben Kahns did a list of all his favorite audio readers, audiobook, and he made Stephen Pacey number 1 on his list. Oh, sorry, spoiler if you haven't seen those videos.
No, I mean that's very much on par from what, like, if I made a list, that's very much so how it would go. I would have to actually, I know what books I enjoyed listening to the audio, but I don't know their names. Yeah. And I think narrators, I should probably recognize more of who does these, because they do a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So, Josh Eats Books says Stour Nightfall made me laugh out loud several times. Okay, I'll have to get privy with that. What? So when you're really in the grind and you're focused on writing, what would you say is your writing process day to day?
Well, for me, writing is all about momentum and maintaining momentum. So it's important for me to have a routine around writing. And it's not that I never take breaks or days off, but when I'm composing in particular, I like to have a strong routine and to keep, even if it's only 100 words or a couple paragraphs, or and when I'm revising, to do at least a couple pages, even no matter how my day's going or whatever, no matter when I have to squeeze it in. But I do try to set aside a time of day. For me, that time of day tends to be from just after lunch until my wife gets home from work. So I spend the afternoon hours writing most days. And when she's working, I'm working. And when she's off, I'm off because I'm flexible. So,
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be like, well, I got to write today if you're off, because she works quite a bit. And so I want, when she's available, I want to be there and hang with her because she's my favorite person in the world. So,
Oh my gosh, I love that.
yeah.
Oh man, that is
So,
so important.
but you doing just a little something, and quite often what I'll do is, and say like today, for example, I'm working on just a quick run through revision of book 3 of this trilogy right now, and I'll work on it through those afternoon hours. Then my wife will come home. We'll take the dog for a walk to the beach, and during that walk, usually, quite often, we'll talk about what I'm working on, and something will occur to me. It's something about walking, being in nature, looking out at water. Something will occur to me about the day, the day's writing, or the next day, and I'll go right home, go up to my desk upstairs, write notes out, and then just leave it. And sometimes this happens when I get out of the shower too, but I always write a few notes, and that gets me going the next day. So, well, like I said, it's all about momentum, and so having those daily notes, and I look back at some of them, and I'm like, what was this? It's almost like notes you make at night while you're sleeping. You look back at them, and you're like,
It's like, what did I mean here?
yeah, what did I mean here? But usually they're good leg up on the next day's work. So it's
What part of that process is hard? So I'm in like the very beginning processes of trying to not be a perfectionist in my first draft,
mm,
and starting a book. And I've tried both ways. Pantsing's not for me at
okay.
all. And outlining, I don't know if I've done it the right way enough to
Yeah.
make. I'm in that very, like I said, very beginning stages of writing, something that I'm very passionately wanting to do.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is some bit of advice that you would give to me? Specifically, what I have an idea of the story, beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
What is something you do at the beginning of a novel that helps you start it?
I used to put a ton of pressure on myself about getting the beginning just right, and I just keep reworking the first chapter, first few chapters over and over and over, and before I would move on. And someone said to me along the way something about shitty first drafts. Have you heard about this?
Uh,
Just crank out what they call a shitty first draft. And then, in other words, even if you get to a point like you get your inciting incident, your opening is going good, and then you get to a point and you don't know how you're going to get to the next stage, but you know what the next element is, when they meet the villain or whatever it is, or what the oppositional force is going to be, and that scene, write some notes and just move to that, and just keep that momentum going. Like, keep writing actual scenes and getting words on the page. You can always go back, and when you get to a point where you feel like, oh, now because you always discover things. Even people I know who are meticulous plotters discover things about the story as they actually compose the pages. Characters will surprise them. Side characters will surprise you. Things will happen along the way. So just focus on getting that entire shitty first draft, and then just know that you're gonna. I mean, the magic happens in revision anyway. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. When I first wrote this story, this was, I mean, it's right. That was a skeleton of what the whole trilogy's become. It was one volume, and it was basically a novella size story about this dude's life. And I knew that I was just taking these huge time jumps, and I knew I had to work out what happened in those periods, but I just went back and did it over time. But the initial story, I wanted to get to how his life impacts future generations of their people, was basically what I was working toward getting to. So yeah, I would say just make yourself keep moving forward and jump to a scene that you can write, and just make yourself some notes, and just know that you're going to learn things along the way, and the magic is going to happen in revision. So
I love that, because that makes perfect sense to me, specifically in this moment where I am, because I know what I want to happen, but I feel like I'm forcing it. So if I kind of move forward, to be continued on this part, go where I know I want to go and start that. I think that naturally, and Philip says it, I think, really well right here. Even we planners sometimes find that the story tells us to take a left turn.
It's almost bound to happen, really. I mean, it's almost inevitable. I mean, so many things are so much different than I initially thought they would be about every story I've ever written. So yeah,
I'm really happy to hear that. And I also love what, because he's been telling me the same thing. Matt just needs to trust the process. He's working with a rookie, so I'm sure he is so frustrated, because he writes very well, and he writes very fast. He's been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
And every time I sit down, I'm like, I know, but I'm at this part, and then I walk away, and I'm not being productive. So I think that's really good information, and I'm absolutely going to try that out. And I think that I'll have a lot more success than what I'm having right now at this moment.
Oh, good. Keep after me, Al.
Thank you. I appreciate that. He also says, the nice thing is the more you write, the cleaner those first drafts get.
That's very true. Very true.
That makes sense.
You learn, I think a big part of that is you learn not just to trust yourself, and you do get better, of course, but you learn to trust readers too. And I think in the beginning, I was so worried about making sure I conveyed everything properly. Am I getting everything right for them? And then it's like, you know what? You kind of have to learn to do this for yourself too, because it really, you're never going to make it through unless you do it because you love it, and you're doing it for yourself.
I love that. I love it. Yeah, right. Ryan Skeffington says, I wish I could insert middle of book here, right?
The old murky middle. Yeah.
So these last few things that I ask are ones I really enjoy the answers to.
Okay.
If you could read one or two novels, you can however many you can think of, for the first time again, which would they be?
I absolutely, and it's going to sound cliche, and everybody's going to expect this, but I absolutely would love to experience The Lord of the Rings again for the first time, just with fresh eyes. Because you got to wonder, would it have the same impact? I think it would, but it just impacted me so hard, and it was such a great thing in my life. I have to say that one. And then, I was thinking about this, and I would love to experience the Far Pavilions again for the first time. It was one of those books that just swept me away. I mean, completely just entranced me. And I remember just not being able, I just couldn't wait to get back to it every time I had to set it down. It was just one of those books that that, and it's not a well-known or beloved book now, but I didn't know that much about India, and all the aspects of that story just hit home for me. And there was a little bit of romance in there, and it just really swept me away. So I think those are my answer right there, those two.
So what was the name of the second one?
The Far Pavilions.
The Far Pavilions.
By a woman named MMK, Kaye. And she's British, and she was raised in India by British parents who lived there when Britain still, that was a colony of Great Britain, obviously. Wow. So it's that old. I think she wrote the book in the late 1950s or early 1960s, and I read it in the 70s. But man, it was a powerful experience.
I'm so glad you talked about Kay. Is it, you said Juliet?
Oh, and then Juliet Marillier,
that's it.
The Seven Waters series is another one that I love.
Awesome. I just want to make sure I got the names right.
Those are the ones based on ancient Ireland.
I can't wait to check those out.
That she did also that's more recent, that's called Warrior Bards, and it's about this group of musicians, and they're bards, they're traveling musicians and poets, and they're also kind of like assassin spies.
Oh wow.
So, in the ancient world, yeah. So, and they run into the Fae. They know about all the Fae aspects of Ireland. She always incorporates that, and music is the connection to the Fae quite often. So,
oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever read anything like that.
I would recommend that one. She's had it going on for a long time. I think she's 20 some published books, but she's fantastic, and I love her dearly. She's a sweet lady too. She's Australian. She lives in Australia, and she came here one time, and we were able to meet. She came to a writing conference that I attended, and we're able to go and have lunch together and so forth. So I really love her dearly.
I can tell, and I think she'll be somebody that I reach out to, and I can hopefully talk to her. That would be so cool. Just hearing how impactful she's been on you and your writing, and just you as a person. That's amazing. What are you reading right now?
So right now I am reading Sarah J. Maas for the first time. I had another writer friend visit here this past summer, and she brought her two daughters, and her daughters are, I think, 19 and 22, and they were both tearing through all these Throne of Glass books, and they're talking to me about, you've read these, right? And I was like, it's YA, I don't really read. And they're like, they're fantasy, you got to read these books, and everybody loves these books, you got to read these books. I'm like, all right, I promise I will. So that's what I'm reading right now.
So are you enjoying it?
Yeah. And I can see, there are lessons in every popular book. It's like, why are these so popular? And I mean, she keeps the pages turning. I'll tell you what, she knows how to keep you invested in the story.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've absolutely, and I'm not, like I said, I'm absolutely not afraid to say that I've picked up, what's the first book? A Court of...
Yeah, Roses, or Court of... Anyway, yeah, I know what
you're the first book.
Yeah.
So I've just heard lots of wonderful things. And then, of course, with popular books, you hear the naysayers and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that I feel like there's a reason that it's piqued my curiosity. So
yeah, it leans romance a little bit, which I think turns a lot of people off. And it's YA romance, so there's a lot of angst and that sort of thing. I enjoy that though. I have romance in my own story. There's a romantic angle to the Severing Sun trilogy, or to the Sundered Nation. I like that, and so I'm enjoying her work very much.
And I think that I don't think I could read every single one of my books with a lot of like romance, but I do believe there's a spot, for me personally,
Yeah, as
to
long as
enjoy
it
that.
doesn't take over the whole story. Yeah, absolutely.
But I definitely believe there's a part of me that would be fulfilled by reading some romance. And I
I
mean,
would say
we're
give it
all
a try. Then, yeah.
all right. I will absolutely. So, ooh, I can't wait to hear this. What are you working on, and what is next for you?
Oh, okay. I'm currently, well, I'm doing all the things to get book 3 ready to go and out, and I hope to do that by late winter, early spring. I think we're shooting for April right now, but that's going to depend on a lot of things, including cover art. But So that's keeping me pretty busy at the moment. But I have plans. What happened was the very first story I wrote was about these characters' children. And so when I started writing The Sundered Nation, it was sort of like going back in time. It was a prequel to the story. And I have this completed trilogy called A Legacy of Broken Oaths about the children of the characters in The Sundered Nation. And it's completed, but I just didn't have the skills to really pull it off when I did it. It was the first thing I ever completed, and it turned into a trilogy pretty early, but I finished it in '09, and I started writing it again, and I never even looked back at the old version. I've never read a single thing. I'm doing it all from memory. I do have a glossary and some other things because some of the names and stuff I couldn't quite remember, but so I've looked at all the accessory writings, but I have not reread the books at all. So I'm gonna recreate those from memory and see how that goes. But so far I'm having a blast. The thing that's happened is some of the characters, some things have been altered, but I'm finding that it's working to my advantage. It's making the story kind of click into place. You know how gears just kind of like, these aren't quite working, but then, oh, if I do this, oh, now they fall into place and click.
I love
And
reading that.
yeah, it's happening, and I'm excited about it. So yeah, I'm about 30% of the way into book 1 in that second trilogy. So that would be sort of like book 4 to this series, but it's going to have its own arc. So it won't, this will be one trilogy and that'll be another trilogy, but sort of like Robin Hobb does it with, the Realm of the Elderlings, their series within the series. I think that's what I aspire to write more series in this world.
That's wonderful. That's exciting. You've got stuff that you're working on now, and then there's things in the future I hear that are wonderful. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for everybody that gets to read that. Because just like I said, from people who I talk to daily that love what you're doing, it's super
That's good to hear.
inspiring. And
Yeah.
I really look up to you and what you're doing and why you're doing it and what set you down this road. Very much so. So I wanted you to know that.
Thanks.
Of course. Would you tell us what social medias like you're active on, kind of keeping up with you, and where people can find your books?
Okay. I'm probably most active on Twitter. Out of all the social media, I'm not on Facebook at all. I am on Instagram, and I just added Threads to my. I have a profile there. I haven't done much there, but I'd say if you're trying to reach me or something, Twitter is a good spot, or through my website. But the other thing that I do very actively is I'm a monthly contributor to a group called Writer Unboxed. And as an aspiring writer, Matt, I would encourage you to go to the Writer Unboxed site and just have a look around. And
Writer Inbox?
Writer Unboxed.
Unboxed.
So we're trying to get ourselves outside the box. So we're unboxing
Makes
ourselves.
perfect sense.
Yeah. So there are a group of us who contribute essays on a routine basis, and they're meant to be, a lot of it is just shared, here's how it feels to do this. How do you feel? And we try to make it like a daily conversation, but it starts with an essay. And then there are some of us who are teachers, and some of that we have a couple of agents and editors, a lot of editors from the traditional side, and quite a few self-published. But there are about 40 of us involved, really active in Writer Unboxed. And then
I'm super excited.
Yeah,
check
so
that out.
Check the site out, and like you can even go to the search box if you're thinking about, like, say you need to write an outline about your next story. You want to see how other writers are doing it. Just put outline in the Writer Unboxed search box, and there'll be 25, 30 things will pop right up for you to take a look at. So wow. I highly recommend it. When I discovered it, I was like, wow. And I just got more and more involved by kind of commenting and being active and with them on social media and so forth. And pretty soon, before I knew it, I was a contributor. So
I cannot wait. I actually just pulled it up for when we're done here. I'm going to definitely check it out.
Oh, cool.
I'm very excited that you mentioned that. So where can we find your books to purchase?
Okay. So ebooks go to Amazon. And I have the Sundered Nation on sale right now for 99 cents. And Bold Ascension is available, I think is $4.99. But the paperbacks, I would recommend going to Barnes and Noble and ordering the paperback, because it's been so fast every time we've done it. And I ordered one each from Amazon and from Barnes and Noble, and I got the Barnes and Noble one in 3 days, and I still haven't gotten the Amazon one, and it's been over a week. So Amazon, I did not do Amazon publishing for the paperback. I'm doing it through Ingram Spark, and Ingram and Amazon, I guess, don't play that well together. So you can order the paperback through Amazon, but it's just going to take a little bit longer. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, well, if you would have done our publishing, it would be a lot faster,
Right.
But because these covers are so important to me, I just wanted, Ingram does beautiful covers. The color is so rich, and
it's gorgeous.
So I got samples from Ingram, and I fell in love, and that's where I'm keeping it. So
I have all those links, guys. I'm glad I got them all covered. I think I got them all covered in the description prior to this. So yeah, check all that out. I'll add Writer Unboxed as well.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
And but yeah, so one of the last questions that I've been asking, and I love the answers to as well. Who are a few people you'd like to see me chat with in the future?
Oh, well, let's go with Juliet Marillier for one.
Yeah.
I think she'd be a fascinating interview for you. And she's a hybrid publisher. She's done both traditional and self-publish over the years, and she's been around for a long time, so she's got a lot of wisdom. And I was, have you done PL Stewart?
He's on. You're the first person to suggest him, but he is coming on very soon. Yes, we have him scheduled.
Good.
I can't wait to talk with him.
Just such a great guy, and his world building is so interesting. And I thought he would be a good guest for you. I kind of looked through some of your former guests. Of course, I thought of Philip right away, and some of the other people you've done. Another self-published author that I've recently read that I loved was, where did I write his name down? Anthony Mitchell. Do you know
Anthony Mitchell? I have not talked with Anthony Mitchell.
He's a Brit, but really similar in that I think he uses alternate history. You can just feel the historical aspects of his work, and I just loved the first book I've read of his. He's got a couple more out that I got to get to, but one of my readers who loved the work said I should read him. Justin Palmer, who's on Twitter, he said, you got to read Anthony Mitchell. So I did. Man, he was right. So good job, Justin, if you're out there.
There you go, Justin. Great recommendation. And yeah, PL is getting the love in the chat by Philip, John, and Christopher.
Oh yeah.
And he does a really cool thing too. He writes, and then he does a blog, and he does interviews, and
he's helpful to the whole community. I mean, he lifts everybody up, that's just the way he is. It's just,
I'm really excited to chat with him.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to that one.
So Juliet, can you spell that last name for me?
Mariiller.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. I actually had that right. I'm terrible at
Good
spelling.
job.
um, well, lastly, I would just really like to just thank you so much for letting me borrow you. From the
Thanks for
wife,
having.
thank her. Of course, I
Oh
get to
yeah.
borrow you for an hour and 6 minutes. And man, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You've given me a
Me
lot
too.
of foundational moments, some really great information for me and anybody who's aspiring to write. And I just appreciate it. And I hope to have you back on the show. And
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
I
Well,
really
just
appreciate.
keep
Oh,
it going. Remember the momentum thing. Don't forget.
yes, absolutely. I have that written down like 3 times. Keep the momentum.
It's important.
And I really want to, on top of thanking Vaughn Roycroft for being here, you guys watching live, and for those of you who will watch in the future. On the 4th, I will be talking with Tony Johnson. He's an indie author. He writes fantasy. And then on the 7th, I'll have to get back with the time on the 4th. But then on the 7th, I'm talking with Clayton Snyder. He wrote Cold West. He's a finalist in the SPFBO right now.
Yeah.
It'll be 9 p.m. that we'll talk with him on the 7th. So look forward to
good
those. And again, Vaughn, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks a lot, man.